Yeah, I hope that's it. I hope things are working now. Gracious goodness, dearie me, what a palaver. Yeah, I hope that's there we go. That's, I hope things are working now. That's it. I've got sound and oh, crikey. Wait a minute. Let me just get my chat out. And then I should be good to go. There we go, all happening. All right. Yes, thanks Andy, I appreciate that. Oh dear. Well, I don't know. Well, I know what happened. I don't know why it happened. But for some reason or other, I might have had an update in my software and Firewall blocked my broadcast desk. So it wouldn't allow me to come in and do what I wanted, but I'm here. So I'm Steve. Hey, this is a wonderful world of woodworking for Carbotech. And today I thought we'd cover some hand plane ideas. There's a lot of discussion around about hand planes and which is best. Is it bevel up or bevel down? Should I have a Yorkshire pitch? Should I have a 60-degree pitch? Should I go micro bevel or full bevel? And is it a long plane, short plane, whatever? So I just want to share some of my experiences and clean my glasses at the same time of what I've found to be useful, and we'll go from there. Basically, it's anyone in the chat room, if you've got any questions at all pertaining to any hand plane, I will endeavour to answer that to the best of my ability, which I hope I can do. Am I in the middle of the picture? Yes, I am there. G'day, Jared. How are you? Lovely to have you on board. Hope you're all having a good Saturday morning. Oh, dear. Oh, I just got to gather my wits now, don't I? Oh. Yeah, so look, the interesting thing with hand planes, it came to me last night. It's very much like golf. Now, if you want to play around a golf, you don't just buy one club. It could be argued if you had a number 7, you can play around a golf with the number 7. And possibly can. In fact, I had a mate that did. But it is so nice to have a driver in your bag, a pitching wedge in your bag, a putter in your bag. So, all right, there you could get away with 4 clubs, I guess. If you've got a number 7, it could do as a pitching wedge. Let's say a sand wedge, okay. A number 7, a sand wedge, a driver, and a putter. You can play a reasonable game of golf with those. You can't quite get the finesse, but you can adjust with the clubs you've got to the terrain you find yourself in. If you're anything like me, you're always in the sand, in the trees, or in the water. Much is the same with hand planes. I know there's a school of thought out there that the number 4 plane is a wonderful plane. For me, I think it is the worst choice of any plane. And the reason for that is because of what people think it is. They think it's an all-round plane. So, you can do smoothing with it, you can shoot with it, you can put bevels and everything on with it. And that's true, you can do all of that. But because it's trying to be everything, it really doesn't do any of those things very well. So first of all, and I'm as I said in the description, this isn't the be-all and end-all. These are my opinions, my experience, and what I've developed over 35 odd years of being a woodworker. So take it with a grain of salt if you like, but it might also give you a bit of insight into which way you want to go if you're going to be buying some more tools. The other thing, before you start looking at planes, look at what is it that you want to be doing in woodwork. There is a plethora, and lots of choices as well, of different areas you can work in woodwork. So if you wanted to make small boxes, little boxes, all you would need would be a block plane. If you want to make slightly bigger boxes, you possibly could go for a 5 1/4 or a number 3 and a block plane. If you want to make chests, then I would suggest you would go for a number 6 or a number 7 and maybe a number 3 and a block plane. All my furniture career, all I really needed, I've got over 60 different planes that get used in my workshop. But all I really, really needed was 3 planes. That'd be a number 7, a number 3, and a block plane. Out of that, I would say the block plane would be equal to a number 7 club because I can use that for so many things. But the number 7 and the number 3 are for me the driver and the sandwich, because sometimes you just need that extra base. So I'll cover some of those. We'll look at planes. What else we got? Bet it's not as colourful as your... Oh, no, shush! No, I'm not. I'm going to... This isn't my stream, Andy, but I will be streaming on my channel next Tuesday, which would be Monday for you. And yeah, I'll apologise about that. And again, technical equipment. But anyway, shush. Don't mention the war, as Basil Fawlty would say. Okay, so planes really haven't changed for many, many years. This one, which I hope this is where, there you go. This one I have dated at around 1860, 1870. It's a Matheson. It was made in Glasgow. I think it's got, has it got, oh, I can't get that out. But it's what they call a trying plane, or a, what's the other word for it? A jointer. And the reason for that is it's for jointing boards. When you joint a board, it's basically getting 2 boards and shooting them so they're flat. So when you join them together, they're going to line up and be square, and you can get a good glue joint. Now this, as I said, what's that, 130, 140, 150. There you go. It's nearly 150, 160 years old. And I bought that for $40 and spent a bit of time on it, doing it up. And it is as good as the day it was made. It's mostly better than the day it was made, because it's got a sharper blade on it. I'll just shoot one bit so you can see it. I use this a lot when I am roughing boards down, and it's amazing how quickly I can chomp through timber when I'm using it. So I'm hoping it's set. There you go. You can see that thickness of that shaving coming off. I'm getting a really nice shaving. So that is a jointer plane, or a triplane. And basically in the new planes, well, when I say new planes, you've got Stanley make the Leonard Bailey style of plane. I think that came in, I'm not exactly sure of the date, but I think it was the latter half of the 19th century, the 1800s. So with a Stanley from a number 8, this actually isn't a Stanley, it's a Lee Nelson, but it's a number 8, through to the number 6. So these would be classed as, starting to get the hang of this now. Okay. These would be classed as jointing planes or shooting planes, and they're for getting nice straight edges when you join boards together. Interestingly enough, here's a little bit of, I don't know how true it is, but it fascinates me that it worked out this way. The numbering system on the Stanley planes from 1 through to 8, it doesn't work on the 5s. I have no idea why, but there you go. If you weigh them, actually I'll just grab a set of scales just to show you that I'm telling the truth. Whoops. Here we go. So if you weigh them, that's how many pounds they weigh. So here's a number 7. And it comes in at 7 pounds. There you go. That comes in at 7 pounds. And that's a number 7. Oh, we're on the back. Number 7. And number 6 comes in at 6 pounds. This is a Stanley number 1. It comes in at 1 pound. And this is a Stanley number 2. It comes in at 2 pounds. So I just found that was interesting. So it had nothing to do with their uses, but don't know. But when you get to 5 pound, no, it loses the plot. It doesn't work as well. So speaking of number 5s, that's a 5.5. Let me put my 2 back up there. This is a 5. Now this one is called a corrugated plane, and I don't think they're made anymore. But the reason for the corrugations were if you had really greasy timber or sticky timber, sappy timber, maybe like teak or spotted gum, or maybe even a bit of green timber. Not that I would like to put a plane over green timber. But these are called jack planes. Jack, originally, from what I'm led to believe, the colloquial expression, hang on, I just got to check something. I don't know what that's on for. I hate it when these things come on. I've got lights and I don't know what they're for. Yeah, colloquially, jack meant shortened version. So jack planes basically are jointers or trying planes, but the shorter versions of them. Down the track, it's sort of got changed to, instead of being short, a jack plane became a jack of all trades planes. And so these were very, very popular. They're not as bulky as the tries or the jointers, and depending on the size of the job you're doing, you could get away quite nicely with these. Then they built another one which actually went into the schools, which I did have one here somewhere. Where'd it go? There you go. And if you're my vintage, you would definitely remember them. These are, there you go. Whoops, let's see if I can get a focus on that. Oh. You gonna focus or what? It's trying, it's trying. Okay, that's, get here. I'm having fun with technology today. There you go. That's a 5 1/4. And they were very, very popular for schools in the education system back in the 60s and maybe a little bit into the early 70s. and they were known as junior jacks or school planes. Then you've got the number 4, which I've got one here, but I don't use it as a number 4. I use this as a hogging plane, which I'll explain later on. And the number 4 was meant to be able to do most of those jobs all these other ones could do. And I think the other reason a lot of people like them is because there's so many of them around. I think every dad, definitely up into the mid-70s, had one of these in the workshop. Whether or not they could use it, whether or not it was sharp, whether or not it was set, is a different kettle of fish. But number 4s, they are everywhere. In fact, I've got a box over there and I've got 34 number 4s in there, along with some other planes, because they were popular. And great DIY plane, absolutely fantastic DIY plane. I'm just having a look at the chat there, Jared. Don't forget. Oh, thanks, Jared. Appreciate that. Dear. Yeah, don't remind me. Oh dear, oh dear. Yeah, so that's why they were around. They're a good DIY plane. Fantastic if you're just doing a bit of outdoor furniture, or you're just fitting a door jamb, or you've got to trim a door off or something. Number 4s come into their own. Yes, definitely. A good plane to have. If you want to get into serious woodworking, there are better choices. But, that notwithstanding. Okay, then we go down to number 3s. And I've got a couple of them here. That's a Lee Nelson one. And there's a... Whoop. See, I can set these up so I can press a button, and there you go. Okay, that's the Stanley, that's the Lee Nelson. Much the same. I have had this one for, crikey, I don't know, many, many years, and it is for smoothing and finishing jobs off. They have a narrower blade than the number 4s. The number 4 and 5 1/4 have the, no, hang on, sorry. The number 4, the number 3 and the 5 1/4 have the same blade width. The number 4, number 5 have the same blade width as each other. Then the 5 1/2, the 6 and the 7 have the same blade width, and then the 8 has a wider one. And I used to know what their sizes were, but over time I've forgotten. So they're bench planes. I'll have a look at some variations of how they've changed over time. There we go. What unfortunately it's good now, but there was a period where the blades got very, very flimsy. If you have a look at the width of that blade there, it's very, very thin. And I don't know if it was cost or whatever reason they did it for, but they were quite nasty in beginning of the 80s, end of the 70s. And it was also almost, how thin can we go? I mean, this one that was made in 1860, it's even thicker than that blade I just showed you in that 5 1/4. But thankfully now, the new blades that are coming out are a lot heavier. And it's also a better metal, which is nice. This is, compare these two. That's a Veritas 5 1/4, and that's a Stanley one. And if you look at the width of that blade there compared to the Veritas, it is thicker. And I find with a thicker blade, you're getting a much better cut, hardly no chatter whatsoever, and it's much easier and nicer to keep sharp. Now, the other thing, I'm putting those down on the bench like that. 9 times out of 10, that's what I do, but I never seem to get a demonstration or a video out without the comment that, oh, that's wrong, you've got to lay it on your side. Well, it's horses for courses. My standard answer is, if it's your plane, you treat it however you like. To me, it's impractical to have it on the side. It's designed to plane timber. I've got a timber bench. What is the drama? It comes, I think, from when we were at school. You would have, remember those benches you had, the four sides, and you had, what do you call it? A vise on each corner, and you had a tool well in the middle. And in that tool well, there were screwdrivers, there might have been a bracing bit, a couple of bits, a chisel, and you come along with your plane and you just go, oh, and you throw your plane in like that, just like that, because it wasn't yours, you didn't know about it, and bang, it lands on a chisel. It chips the blade, it marks the sole of the plane. Or it's sitting down on tools like that and you drag it back and it'll scratch the sole. Now that's very valid, but when you've been in a workshop for a while and you get busy, and a lot of you have seen my workshop, it gets messy because I get busy. If I put my tools down there like that, and then I might have finished with a hammer or a chisel, and there's my plane, and I just throw the chisel on the bench, see what happened? Boom, straight into the sole of the plane, which is going to damage it as it would have if you put it down like that. So for me, I much prefer it there. It's protected. I'm not going to cut myself. All my blades are sharp, and I have in the past had blades with a bit of cloth over the top and forgotten about it and gone like that and cut myself reasonably badly, not too badly because the plane's set fairly fine. But again, it's your plane, you put it wherever you like. Next, we'll move on to the number 7 of planes, block plane. Block plane, I would say, I'd say 95%, but let's be realistic. 80% of planing I do, number of times, not amount of timber, is with a block plane. Whether I'm truing the lid up on a box, I'm cleaning end grain off, I'm finishing dovetails, I'm just finessing a little piece of veneer, that is the go-to plane. Now there's a lot of difference in planes. I did have, where is it? I thought I did. Oh, here we go. Now, again, if you're going to get into woodworking seriously, have a look at what's around. This is a generic Stanley. It's an 060. Well, in fact, this one I think is, I don't know, it might be an 090, but it's the same as the 060s. The only difference I can find, it's got a yellow sticker, not a white one. And this is the Veritas. Now, the difference between the two, this one is more expensive and this one requires a lot of work. So you've got to weigh it up. For me, as I said, I've used not this particular one, but one of these for a long time until I bought a Veritas. And the Veritas one I first bought, which unfortunately I don't think they make anymore, is this one here. It's called an NX60. It's nickel plated. And it is by far, hands down, the best block plane I have ever used or owned in my life. That's the NX60. This is the DX60, which is the replacement for that. And that is now my workhorse, because seeing that I don't make these anymore, I thought, oh, I won't wear that one out, I'll use this one. Basically, it's the same plane. Now, the difference between the two is to get the cheaper plane up to the standard of this plane takes several hours of work, because you have to, it comes with a machine, not a machine bottom. It comes with a bottom. I've got a number 6 actually. I don't know why this number 6 is like that, but you can see the machining marks on here. On these generics, the machining marks are all up the base, and it takes a lot of physical effort, a lot of time to actually get that so it's machined flat. Sometimes these aren't absolutely square either, so you have to make sure that they're square, and you have to do a lot of work on the blade. You can see there I've flattened that, and it's not too bad now. But have a look at the amount of meat that's on that blade. We're missing all of this area here, and it's reasonably thin. Compare that to this one. The difference between the two thicknesses. There you go. This also, I believe, is, no, it's not tool steel, it's ordinary carbon steel. This is A1 steel, which is a lot tougher, which means the edge stays there for a lot longer. And being a more rigid blade, you get a nicer shaving, I suppose. You get more firmness, I suppose the word would be. You don't get as much chatter. I'll just put these together. Both will work well, but somebody said to me, if you pay for something, it only hurts. What is it? If you pay a bigger price for something, it only hurts once. Whereas if you skimp, it hurts every time you use it. And then generally you upgrade anyway. So, you know, but it all depends on how serious you are with woodworking and what your budget is. These will work fine. I've got no dramas with that. But given the choice, spend that little bit extra and get one that is already set. The weights, that's an interesting thing. I don't know if there's going to be much difference in the weights. Let's have a look. Okay, this is that one. What's that? That's just under 1.5 pounds. And, whoops, this is the other one. Okay, so you've got about an extra 4 ounces in it. But to hold it, there is a lot of difference. This just feels much nicer in your hand. Also, this is sharp on the edge. This has just got a nice little feel to it, so you're not going to cut yourself. I have noticed with chisels recently, there's some brand new chisels out. And they're definitely not entry-level chisels, and you can cut yourself on the edge of the blade, it's that sharp. So, block plane is a definite must. And get yourself a good one. Oh, there you go. This is the one I've been using for over 30 years. You see it's got a yellow sticker on it as opposed to the white sticker. But that's about the only difference I can tell. But that hasn't been used for a while. That's when the grandkids come down. They're the ones they get to play with. Okay, so work out what it is. That's the other thing with a block plane. This has got one, but this has also got it. What you want is a movable mouth. You see how that mouth moves? So if I want a really, really, really fine shaving, I can make that mouth really nice and small. And we'll see. Oh, where's that bit that I had? Oh, no, a little bit. Oh. Boom, boom, boom. There we go. Whoops. Got to reset it now because I just took the blade out. There you go. That's nice and smooth. The other thing you can use the block plane for, if you didn't want to machine your own timber, but even if you machine your own timber, it's still good to have. Many times you'll buy timber from the hardware shop and it's square. It's straight, it's square, but when you look down the edge of it, you can see that there. It's got machining marks. Oh, that's a bit better there. You can see where it's actually come off with a knife. You see those lumpy bits there? If you've got a nice block plane, when you've finished, or just before you start your work, you take those off. Because if it's already square, you don't have to shoot it square because it's been machined square. But can you see all those kinky bits? And that shows up. If you do a job, say it's a box or a door or a window or something, and you leave those on there, when you put the finish on, it will come through the finish. So if you plane until you get a nice full length shaving, full width, and it's smooth both sides, you know you've got those machining marks off, and it just gives that extra professionalism to your work. You go and have a look at it. It's amazing. A lot of handmade furniture in furniture shops and what have you, have a look on the inside of the doors or the back edge or sometimes the front edge of a cabinet, and it's got the knife marks. Block plane cleans that up beautifully. Now, getting back to numbers of planes and golf clubs, if you like, if I could only have 2 golf clubs, I would have a number 7 and a putter. So that's my number 7, which is a block plane, and the putter would be a number 5 1/4, because 5 1/4, it's a little bit longer than a number 4, and it's still small enough that you can use it as a smoothing plane. Smoothing plane. So that's the old Junior Jack right there, which I don't believe they make them anymore. But I'm happy to be corrected, but I think at the moment the only other people that are making 5 1/4 is Veritas. And an interesting thing with this plane, it does have a movable mouth, but it's not. So this one, the mouth actually moves onto the blade. With this one, the whole body, see that gap there? The whole body of the plane moves into the cutting aperture. So it's not a movable mouth in the sense that this one is, but you can decrease the size of the mouth by sliding the whole lot up. Normal planes can do that too, but it's not nearly as successful. With these, you undo these two screws here. There's an adjustment screw here at the back, and you move the whole frog up. What happens there, unfortunately, the front of the frog, which is this part, goes over the cutting slot, but it's not supported underneath, so that can give you chatter. Again, I really like the way this one's done, because even though I'm moving it forward and making a smaller mouth, it's still supporting the entire mounting and the blade in one go. So there you go. So if you're going to do just general box making, I'll put this together while I'm talking if I can. Honestly, 2 planes. Get a block plane, get a 5 1/4. If you want to do real small stuff, get a block plane and a number 3. If you want to do a whole range, get a number 3, a 7 and a block plane, and you'll be good to go. The types of, the parts of the planes haven't changed much. You've got a body, a tote, a knob, the frog, a cap iron, an iron and a lever cap. With the newer planes, you've still got it, but they're slightly different. Oh, and a lateral, which is on the frog. This has got a, instead of a lever cap, it's got a screw mount, which isn't really new. I've had this circular plane for years, and I bought this back in the 80s, I think it was, and it had a screw cap. So that's what they call a compass plane. That's for doing internal, that's an internal cut there, and then external you go. Mainly they were used for wheelwrights, but it does come in handy when you're doing headboards and what have you on beds or splashbacks on cabinets, what have you. So yeah, it's still got the same thing. This incorporates the lateral, is also the depth adjuster, whereas on the standard Baileys you've got a depth adjusting screw there and the lateral lever is at the top. So let me just put this together. Oh, that's nice. It's just told me I've got 8,650,000 files on my computer. Oh, good. I'm happy. Andy, how to tighten the tote on my number 3? May have to use a washer and shorten thread. Yeah, that's the thing. Sometimes they do get a bit wobbly, and be careful that you don't over tighten it, because you can strip the thread really, really easily. What did I used to do? I'd actually, depends which end you're talking, because you've got a thread going into the sole of the plane, and then you've got a thread going onto the nut. If it's home on the sole and you need it at the top, yeah, you can put a washer over there. I wouldn't recommend shortening the thread, because you can get into all sorts of caper. Or the other thing, whack a bit of elastic underneath it. That'll tighten it up. All right, now plane uses. Where are we up? Where are we? 5 1/4. What was I going to cover? Oh yeah, here's some little, oh look at that. I just looked at my bench. That one's on its side, that one's on its sole, and that one's on its side. So, go figure. Let's just get a bit of timber and we'll do a little bit. Okay, so we got that off there. We might clean this bit up here. The reason for the longer plane too is if you're using and I'll exaggerate here, but where's the... Oh, here you go. Here you go. Look at this. They're made to order. As you can read the grain there, so it's going that way. So that's the direction I have to plane. For those that have missed it, this is my water trick. If I push down on that, oh, that's not too bad, actually. There you go. Push down that. There's a handle there. See how that moves? If I spray a little bit of water in there, nothing flash, just straight out of the tap, then put this in there, same thing, handles there. I can actually pick my bench up and that will not move in the vise. It is rock solid. So if I was to use a small plane, and if you look at this, it's not dead straight. It actually dishes in the middle. If I was to use a normal plane, or a small plane, and let me just give it a bit more. That is now smooth. I don't want to make a liar out of myself, but if I put a straight edge on that, I don't know if you can see it. If I put a straight edge on that, you can see it's not straight because light's getting through. What it's doing is touching here and it's touching here, but the middle is actually got a cup in it or a bow in it. So you could say, oh, well, that's been planed, it's nice and square. It might be square that way, but it's not square this way. And the reason for it is because this is a small plane, I'm just following the contours of the timber. So I could be planing like that, still get nice sharp edges, get it 90 degrees to the face, but that's not straight. Whereas if we'll get a number 7. In fact, I'll do it. What have we got here? No, I'll do it with a 5 1/4. You'll hear hit and miss. It's hard to read that. Okay. With this, I'll get a full shaving. Let's go back to 3. I'll make sure I get a full shaving. Okay, that's a full shaving off of that board. You're going to have to take my word for it, but it's a full shaving. But it's not straight. Well, actually, I'll start with a number 7 to really give you an idea. Here, you'll hear it, and then it'll stop, and then it'll start again. So, do you hear that? Then there's nothing, and then there's a bit off the end, which means I'm planing this, and I'm planing this. That's called hit and miss. That's why you need the longer blade or the longer sole, so it will actually bridge the gap from the two ends. So if we use a 5 1/2, if this one's going to be, there we go, we're nearly all the way through. Now I've got a full shaving. I think if I put a straight edge on that, there won't be any light getting through at all, because that now is flat. That's why you need a couple of planes and a long one. So if you're making boxes, if your boxes aren't going to be any bigger than your plane, get a small, you know, a 5 1/4. If you're going to make chests and you're making big things, I'm going to do a series later on. I'm making a 15th century chest. It's got linen fold and a bit of blacksmithing work, and that'll be available on the Carbotech channel down the track, but get a bigger plane. What have we got now? Okay. Now the other thing is, if you've got a number 3, which I'll use, you can do this with a 5 1/4, but okay, we've got, let's see if you can see it. See machining marks on there. I can see them, so I'm hoping you can. Now to smooth this, I'd use a smoothing plane. Initially what I will do, I'll use this 5 1/4, back the plane off a little bit. When you're setting the laterals, if it's as it is there, it's digging in this side, you push the lateral to the other side, and then that'll even it up. And there you can see it's coming off the middle, or a little bit on both sides. You're getting a wider one. All right, now if I was to use this as a smoothing plane, I don't know if it'll work or do what I wanted to do. Let's see. Yep, there we go. Not as pronounced, but I'm getting a nice wide shaving, and if you look really closely, it's not all that pronounced, I'm sorry, but there is lines. There's one there, there's another one there, there's one there, and one there. What they are, they're called I call them tram tracks, and what that's caused by is the corners of the blade are very, very sharp. And so when you're planing, those corners actually dig into the timber. Where what I've done with my number 3 is I've round the corners off. Oh, let's have a look. So they're not dead square. They've actually just had the corners rounded off. So when I use that, I'm just going to put a little bit of wax on there, only on the front. I can plane all over there. And that doesn't leave any marks because I've rounded the corners off. The other thing, when I said with the wax, if I'm shooting a board that I'm going to glue, candle wax or paraffin wax, beeswax, I put it on the front of the plane only, because as this goes along the timber, to make it more lubricated, is actually getting a little bit of grease or candle wax in front of the blade, which helps it slide. and the blade then takes that little piece of grease off when it takes the shaving. If I put wax on the back, what happens is it's nice and smooth to use, but as that blade takes the wax off the front, I'm then laying wax on the part that I've just planed. So now there's a very thin layer of wax. In fact, I can feel it. I don't know if you can see it, but I can definitely feel it. There's a thin coating of wax on that joint. So when I go and put the glue in and glue it together, the joint won't hold because we've basically insulated the timber from getting any glue by putting some wax on there. So that's something to be mindful of. If you're going to use wax, make sure it just goes on the front. There are times, if I'm just shooting a board square and it's going to be a bare edge, I will then put wax on the front and the back of the plane, and it doesn't matter, but just be mindful of those little things. We'll just take the machining marks off this one. Again, for that we'll use this. Grease on the front. Hold it square. I use my fingers underneath the plane to make it, keep it steady, jamming it in between the timber and the sole. Thumb on the top and just push through. That's set fairly fine, so we might just give it just a little bit more tooth. There we go. And there you go, nice and square. And again, we don't have any corrugations on that shaving. Whereas the first one, if we compare the two, if you look at that one, you can see all the bumpy bits. There you go. And that's the knife marks from the machine, whereas this one is a knife off of the plane. So it's nice and square and flat. Quite a lot of the little planes you can get involved in. So that's my advice would be, first of all, work out exactly what it is you want to be doing with woodwork, what you want to make, and then start getting your toolkit in accordance with that. My number one word of advice would be get a good block plane to start with, because it doesn't matter what genre of woodwork you want to get into, you will need a block plane, without a doubt. And they're so handy, just have them in your pocket. If you go to a timber yard and you want to have a look at some timber, have that in your pocket, you pull it out, just plane the end off, and you can see what the timber looks like underneath. Okie dokie. What else? Oh, okay. Let's look at some. These are nice. These are Plow Planes. You used to be able to get the old Stanley 45s. Oh dear. Which is this big set of kit here. And then there's Stanley 55s. I've never worked out how to use a 55. But just purpose-built plough planes are really, really good if, what happened there? If you're, again, you want to get into box making. You might decide you want to put a panel in a box. Well, what you do then is you can set up this to, you put the cutter in, whoops, that's the width of the slot you want to cut. Just bring that out a bit. Check your grain direction. Oh, I'll tell you what, I've put all new vices in here now. I've got all record, what are they? 52 and a halves or 57? 52 and a halves. I've had them for ages, and wanted to change them over, so I've done it. Okay. Now, when you're using a plow plane, two schools of thought. If you're not used to it, I would start off at the end like this and gradually work your way back. That way you're easing into the cut as you go. I'll take a little bit of that off, I think. And to me, when you're starting, you've got far more control over what you're doing. Just chip that bit out. Whereas there's another school of thought that says if you're going to do a slot, start right up the other end and just go all the way through. So horses for courses on that one. Whoops. And again, this is if you don't want to, if you just want to do handwork. You don't want to use a saw, you don't want to use a router. And sometimes it's so nice just to be able to use a hand tool to do a job. Going a little bit off there. Or you could use it for, have you seen styles on bookcases where they've just got beading going up? What's the other tool you could use for that if you wanted? Would be a router plane, which is, that's the Veritas, oh, that's the Stanley. And much the same thing, they're good for putting in hinges. This one I haven't got a fence with, but it does come with a fence. And you set your fence up, and again you just, this is, whoa, way too big. Bring that up a bit. I don't know what I was cutting with it before, but boy, it must have been deep. There you go. And then as you go deeper, you just drop your blade down a little bit each time. Whoops. But again, you can make a little rebate there using that. With that, you have to adjust it all the time. They're pretty handy. I like using them, particularly for setting in hinges, in boxes and what have you, or doors. The other thing, if you want to do a rebate, they now have rebate planes. Now, this is a carriage plane, or a rebate plane. It's about 1950s, I think this one is. And as you can tell, the blade goes to full width. That's an 010, and that's a carriage plane, but it's also a rebate plane. I think it's a Stanley, I forgot what it is. I think it's a 49 or something or other, or 79, is also a Philister plane. But these ones are a rebate plane. It doesn't go all the way through, so you've got to have a right and a left, and it also has a skew blade in it. So really you could use this as a block plane as well if you wanted to. But much the same setup. I like using these. We can just set this into there, move the fence up. And the reason you've got a right and a left is obviously if I'm going down this way on this side, and if I wanted to go down the other side, I can go this way. So I'm still going with the grain. If you look at this one, the grain's running this way, but when I turn the board around, the grain's running the other way. So that's why I need a pair of them. Let me just see if we can. The other thing, cordless routers, or as they're called, router planes, not so much plow planes, but definitely rebate planes, is when you have a tenon and you want to clean the tenon up. You can get shoulder planes, but again, I don't know if they still make these. They're a very fine mouthed plane, and that goes right up into the corner and cuts across and cleans your tenon up. Well, there's wooden versions. If I can get it out. Again, very finely set. In you go, and you can clean your tenons up with that. Whereas the rebate plane, I'll see if I can get this in there. It's a quick release. Use it as a quick release. It actually is fitted with, these are just straight blades, and nothing wrong with that whatsoever. They work quite well. But these have little cam set nickers on the side, and what that does, it actually scores the timber across the grain when you're using it. There's also, let me see. Yeah, these Dado Planes are the same. They have little knives in here that score the timber. They basically cut the fibres ahead of the blade. These being a concentric cam, you just put a Phillips head in there. This is the knob that loosens it. No, hang on, sorry, that's for the mouth. You just loosen that off and the blade, the little cutter, will come down, and when you're going with the grain, you don't need it. When you go across the grain, you drop it down, and then when you are cleaning a tenon, you can get a nice, let's just move that up a bit. A nice clean shoulder which will give you a nice clean joint. And you can see, you might be able to see just the cut line down there that little nicker does. So there we go. That's another couple of options down the track. Again, if you're box making, it might be worthwhile looking at a plow plane or a rebate plane for doing slots if you're going to do raised panels, or depending how you're going to put your boxes together. If you want to dress your own timber and you've got rough sawn stuff, this one here is what they call a scrub plane. And if you look at that blade, that is sticking out a fair way, and it's also curved. And what that does, it removes a lot of stock in a very short space of time. Not even if you just want to dress your own timber. You might have, as in my case, I do have a 20-inch wide thicknesser, but I've only got a 10-inch wide, or sorry, I'm trying to remember, what's that? 520 inch, 400, okay, 500 wide, 500 mil wide thicknesser, but I've only got a 200 mil wide jointer. So if I've got a board that's 480 wide and I want to make a door panel out of it or something, I can't put it into the thicknesser because it's just going to mimic what the other side of the board is. So if it's got a twist, it'll go through the thicknesser, it'll dress one side, but when it comes out, it'll still have a twist in it. And it's too wide to put over a 200 mil jointer. So a scrub plane is a wonderful, let's see if I can find a ratty old bit of timber I could use. Oh. Most of the stuff I've got here is dressed. No, that one. Let me just hang on. White one, what have I got there? No, that's plywood, that won't work. What's that? Oh, here you go, that'll do. Ooh. Okay, here's a perfect example. I'm not going to do all of this, but it'll give you an idea. Now, if I wanted to dress that, it won't fit on my jointer. So I'm going to have to figure out one way of getting one side flat. Once you've got one side flat, no dramas. Then you can put it through the thicknesser and it will work a-okay. So that's where scrub planes come into their own. I'll show you how to sharpen a scrub plane too. If you've got, depending how you sharpen your tools, and again, that could be a 3-hour stream and we still wouldn't cover all the options for sharpening tools. But if you're using a stone, I'll show you how to do that on a stone. I would be sharpening at 25 degrees, which is generally the factory setting that they come out with. Just trying to see how I can, yeah, okay. And then put a micro bevel on it of 5 degrees. So you're then cutting at 30 degrees, which is the desired angle really for a plane. And then when you have to resharpen, you just go over to your stone, you touch up that micro bevel, which then goes from 30 degrees to might be 32 degrees, and you keep on working. And then when it gets dull, you then go back to your stone, put another micro bevel on there, and it could be 34 degrees. And you keep going until the plane just isn't working anymore. Then you've got to go back to either a grinding wheel or a belt or your stone and completely get a new cutting bevel, primary bevel, and then you can go through the micros again. What I do, if I've got a jig set up and I'm using that jig all the time, I then set all my plane blades at 30 degrees. because I've got no need for a micro bevel. It's the old adage, sharpen a little and sharpen often, rather than sharpen a little and sharpen a lot. If that makes sense. No. Sharpen often and sharpen a little, yeah. Or sharpen not very often and you sharpen a lot. And it can take you a long time to get that primary bevel back. So it just depends. With one of these, let's see if I can get that without making a mess. With this blade here, as you can tell, it's quite substantial and it's got a big convex surface on it. If you're using stones, what I do is put some little brads in the end. So then when I put it on the bench, I push in and it won't move. I now prefer actually to use diamond stones, but they weren't around when I started, so I've used ordinary stones for a while. That's just kerosene on there. Let me just bring that in a bit. There you go. And I bring it up until there's just a little change in the surface of the stone. This is pretty dry, so I might put a bit more in there. And then bring it up a fraction more. And because it's curved, instead of going straight up and down, I start at this corner and then rock it as I go. And then come back the same way. And then you can go the other way, start from this corner and rock it. And you do it with your body, you don't go like this with your arms. You actually just rock it with your body. That way you're maintaining the same angle all the time with your arms. And it's just your body is moving. Then you feel if you've got a little burr on the back, which I do have. And again, these are locked into my side and I'm just going backwards and forwards. And then you feel that burr's gone. A little bit on that corner. But as I said, this is a hogging, a scrub plane. And then I just check to see if it's sharp. If it digs into my finger like that, it's sharp. So there's not much pressure. You'll just feel it catch. And then just as a little added bonus, I'll put a strop in the vise. And just strop it. I don't put any compounds or anything on there. I just start up this end, and as you drag it, you roll it. So put it up, roll it. Off the bottom. Yeah, it's pretty good. You want this to be reasonably aggressive. Whoops. That's way too much. I've got about 1/8 of an inch out. That's the other thing the new planes have now, which I think is great. A lot of times they'll have set screws on the side. This one actually has two. Whoops, where are we? They're just little set screws in there, and you square your blade up, and then you just tighten those, and your blade stays square to the bottom. So let's see how we're going here. Okay, that's going to take a lot out. Let me just have a look. So I might do it this way here, and then we can just do a little bit. Okay, right there. Now, I don't know if I can do this. I'm gonna try and be clever. Oh, let me see. Here we go. So if I go there, put that one there. Okay, you can see me there. I wonder if I can make that any bigger. No. So you just have to have me there for the moment. Or where can I go? Can I go down there? Look at that. There you go. So I'm going to do this on a skew, which is at an angle, and we'll just see. I'm only going to do a little bit, but we'll bring it up so it's nice and flat. That's way too much. If you can see how deep that is, it is way too much. And this isn't about being nice. It's not about being pretty. This is purely about removing timber so we can get a flat surface. So then we can go and use the machine. One of my sticky tape dispensers. All right, so now I've got all that grey wood off. It's still a little bit bumpy. So what I've done with the number 4, and again, this is something you can do, pick a number 4 up, nice and cheap. You know, you can get one for 40, 50 bucks or even less. And I've put a slight convex on the standard blade. This is just a standard blade. And I use it as a hogging plane. So first of all, I'll clean up using a scrub plane. Then I go in with this, which takes out the ridges of the scrub plane, and leaves small ridges. Then you can go to a normal plane if you wish. In this case, I can put the wax top and bottom because this is going to go through a machine. So it doesn't matter if it's got wax on it. Now that's got Tram Tracks in it. Which I hope you can see from there. There you go. Big one there, some there, one down there. Now that's caused, as I said earlier, by the corner of the blade. Now, in this particular situation, I wouldn't do the next step because all I want to do is bring this down so it's flat, so then I can put it through a machine. But having said that, once it's gone through the machine, in most cases, you still have to put a smoothing plane over it to get rid of the machining marks, unless you've got a new, I stress, helix cutter, which will give you a beautiful finish off the knife, but after you've used it for a bit, they do get nicks in them. Don't think they don't, because they do, and you will still need a smoothing plane to finish it off. The other big benefit with using a smoothing plane is you don't have to sand. And when you apply your finish, it goes on and stays flat. Whereas if you've sanded, I don't know if you've done it, but you sand, then you put your stain on, whether it's a spirit stain, a water stain, a shellac or whatever, and then you get the grain rising, then you have to denib it. And in many cases, if you've got the stain, that's the exact colour I want, and then you get in there and you rub it back because you're denibbing it, you then lose a lot of the saturation of your stain, which means you have to stain it again. And then that's going to make it darker than what it originally was. Whereas if you use a hand plane, you don't get grain rising because you've actually sliced the timber, so it is nice and flat. You don't have to sand it. It takes a finish a lot better. Oops. And on top of that, you're getting the aerobic to work out as well. And that is pretty good. I do have a couple little cracks in there, but I think that's mainly because I have changed the setting on my plane. What we might do, I'll just put the, where's the block plane? Put the block plane over it and see how we go. There you go. Nicely fine set block plane. You can skew it plane it. Now, must admit, it's a gnarly cranky old bit of satinwood. Maple silkwood, sorry, not satinwood. But if you have a look at that, this is what we started with, which, as you can see, is rough sawn. They're the bandsaw marks from where it was cut from the log. And now just by using hand planes, I'll just get that into focus. What I'll do, I'll put a bit of water on there too. You've got quite a nice chatoyance coming off the timber, and it's nice and flat. And there was no machines turned on at all. So that may be another one if you want to really get into hand planes, get yourself a scrub plane, or if before you get a scrub plane, get an old number 4 and turn it into a hogging plane, or what I call a hogging plane. But I think the most important thing is work out exactly what sort of woodwork you want to do. I've lost my mat, there it is. Once you've worked that out, then you're in a situation where you can say, okay, look, I need this, I want this. And in Carbotec's case, if you go there, they have got a lovely setup of different planes. And I don't know if it's all stores, but I know Capella Bar store, you can go in and you can actually plane bits of timber and use the different planes. They're all on display. Pick them up, use them, ask questions. Block plane, definitely. No matter what sort of woodworking you want to go, block plane is the go. And just practice. And gradually, it becomes a bit of a disease, actually. As I said, I've got over 60 planes. That doesn't include the 30 number 4s and goodness knows what else I've got over there that I was going to do up about 15 years ago, and I haven't got around to it. And then these are all planes in the back here. These are all moulding planes and moving filisters and wooden planes. Adjusting them is a little bit different. You use a hammer. That's the other thing. If you're going to get a plane and you're new to woodwork, get one that you feel comfortable using. Whether it is adjust with a hammer or whether it's a screw thread adjustment. Movable mouth is a really good bonus if you can get one with those. I was going to say something else then when I was looking at those. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, bevel up or bevel down. Personally, I'm not a fan of bevel up. What I mean by bevel up, okay, this one's bevel up. It's block planes are all bevel up, and I've got no problems with those, but whether it's not, it's just because I was brought up with bevel downs, I don't know. They do have their uses. Some say they wear differently to bevel down, but again, it is a personal preference. It's whatever you feel comfortable with. I can use bevel up, I can use bevel down, I can use a number 4, but as I said at the beginning, this isn't a be all and end all. This is just my experience with using planes, what's worked for me. And I sincerely hope when you continue your woodworking journey, you'll find out what works for you. And it could be totally contrary to what I have just been discussing for the last hour and a half. And that is fine, because the great thing about woodwork is it's an individual passion. Even if you're doing a commission, so, oh, but I'm doing a commission, it has to be done that way. Yeah, that's true. It has to be a certain dimension. The doors have to open a certain way. The drawers have to be a certain height. But your creative input is whether or not you decide, okay, you decide whether you put these two bits of veneer together. Where is it? Come on, get into focus. It's going to focus. There you go. Whether or not you decide you put these two veneer pieces together like that, or it's up to you whether you put them together that way. I nearly got through an hour and a half without any glitches. Yeah, so you've got a choice. You can put the veneer that way. You can put the veneer that way. You can have it this way. Yeah, you do have a lot of personal input to the jobs you're doing. I remember once I was running a large factory, And I asked someone who was a woodworker. No, he wasn't, sorry, he was a worker. And I asked him to put this panel into a door, and he did it. And when I looked at the finished job, I said, you put the panel in upside down. He said, what are you talking about? I said, well, if you look at it, the grain of the timber, now this is a cathedral cut, the grain of the timber's running that way, and that's the way it should be in the door. You've put it in that way, and the cabinet looks unbalanced. He said, oh, I don't know what you're carrying on about. Who cares? The panel's the panel. And that brings me, I guess, in closure to a lovely story about three people. Well, one person said, what are you doing? He said, oh, I'm working for 20 bucks an hour. Another bloke said, what are you doing? Oh, he said, I'm laying bricks. And the third bloke, he said, what are you doing? He said, I'm building a cathedral. Now, three workmen, same working site, three different attitudes. And that is the same with woodwork. You can get in there and you can butcher bits of wood if you like. You can play around and glue things together, and if they don't fit, doesn't matter, they make glue now that'll fill that gap adequately. And I will admit, I have used that in the past myself. But then you could also be that person, it doesn't fit, it's not right, I think I'll do it again. And that is where you learn, by getting things wrong, practicing, doing it again. I don't know if this is telling tales out of school, but I just thought it was amazing. On my YouTube channel, Woodworking Masterclass, I did an excerpt from a video I did for Carbotech, and I cut a piece of timber using a saw, and it was square. And I got a square to show you it was square this way and to square that way. It was a 2-minute video I uploaded to my website, and one of the comments was, oh, I'm seeing this is the 1st of April, that's an April Fool's joke. No one can cut anything square with a saw, you need a machine. And my answer was, you don't need a machine if you've been doing it for over 35 years and care about what you do. And that's all it is. People say, oh, when you do dovetails, oh, you make them look easy. They are easy. I've been doing it for 35 years. And it's just a question of allowing yourself to get it wrong, make mistakes, waste timber, change plans to do with growth with whatever you're doing with woodwork. Oh, that sounded a little bit school marmish. It wasn't meant to be, and there's no respect to school mums either. But yeah, you get out of woodwork whatever you want to get out of woodwork. If you just want to be DIY and nail things together, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that whatsoever. If you want to get into do French polishing, carving, marquetry, and working within 1/1000th of an inch, nothing wrong with that either. It's whatever pleasure you derive from your journey. And I wish you every success with your journey, and I hope these ramblings for the last nearly 2 hours make some sense and you can walk away with something. Even if it's the sheer fact that is rubbish, I'm putting my plane down like that. That's cool. I feel as if I've achieved something. So thank you very much for your attendance. Thanks for everyone in the chat room that joined in. If you do have any questions, by all means, ask them in the comments below. Give Carbotech a ring. If you want something actually shown or explained or demonstrated on a stream, let them know, and they will in turn let me know, and I will endeavour to fulfil your wishes. So until we meet again and we're in the workshop making shavings and sawdust, I wish you all the very, very best. Be safe, drive carefully, follow the rules, and I look forward to hearing about your successes and maybe seeing some of your jobs. In the meantime, look after yourselves. This is Steve Hay for Carbotech, the wonderful world of woodworking, saying bye for now. Now I got to find the right button.